Hey, everybody, this is So Many Sequels. I'm Josh.
Garrett.
And I'm David.
Welcome to episode 2 of So Many Scares 2022.
Oh my God, so bulky.
So
What kind of spooky
spooky.
hat?
We got a brand new movie for everybody this week. Hopefully, everybody got to catch up and enjoy last week's show, which was our discussion of Hocus Pocus, the original Hocus Pocus, because this week, talking about Hocus Pocus 2. Long time coming. 30 almost 30 years in the making, which is crazy to think about because that's such a long time between sequels.
Yeah.
And it's finally here. The new Hocus Pocus. I say new. It's a lot of the old still. We got the Sanderson sisters are all back, which you have to have before we even go any further. They couldn't have done another Hocus Pocus without Bette Midler, Kathy Najimy, and Sarah Jessica Parker. So thankfully, all three of them agreed to come back to this. I honestly don't feel like the movie needs a whole lot of setup. It's it's Hocus Pocus. You saw the first one; the story's not too terribly off. So
It's only it has its different components though.
yeah,
This one
But-
is very much a passing the torch seemingly kind of movie.
a little bit. So to refresh our minds a little bit from last week, we had talked about at the end of that episode what kind of our expectations were going into this. David, your expectations were very low. You were pretty pessimistic about it.
Bottom of the basement. Yeah.
I was not quite as far as you, but I was pretty neutral to cynical toward it. I feel like, Garrett, you weren't like hyped on it, but you had higher expectations, I think, right?
I did to an extent.
That's what I thought.
I didn't necessarily think that they would all come back if they didn't think it was going to be good. And I think that the movie was middling, but good. No, it was middling, but good.
Middling.
I really enjoyed the young Sanderson sisters. I really enjoyed the opening of this movie. I thought that was a fun dynamic and you get to see them. And I thought those girls did a fantastic job of acting as the older versions of what we had grown up with. And I thought that was a fun way to open it and kind of give you a different. And then I like that they gave you the new people, the people that they are seemingly passing the torch to. You get a little bit of that. And I really enjoyed the introduction. You know, it was theatrical. It was the witches are back and it's silly and it's goofy. And it was a little almost too over the top until they brought it back and they were like, who are they performing for? And they go, you. And I thought that was funny, you know. And I think it was right when Mary started to fart as she went through the gates where I went, oh God, what are they giving me here? And then that's when they just gave it. They gave you, you know, you can hit nostalgia in a way that's fun, or you can hit nostalgia in a way that's cliche and overdone, and they hit it that just peak. I mean, everything that you felt like you wanted to see, they gave it to you in a way that I didn't like. It felt forced, like when they walked and did the huddle down the Walgreens, it was like, boom, hit you in the face with an uppercut one. And then it was like, and they set it up and it was like, bang.
I was so surprised.
I was up to that right. And as someone who said that was my favorite, like one of the parts that I enjoyed last week, it was just T-ball. Everything was T-ball. And I just didn't find it fun. But then they picked it back up and I really liked the send-off they gave them and the way that they hand off the torch. So it kind of does a bowl for me. That middle's really tough, but if you can make it through, then the payoff is good.
Okay. David, you had the opposite expectation. How did to you?
Yeah, my expectations were locked in the basement with a spell, unable to get out, right?
Right.
They were very, very low. And I think that served me well because, like Garrett said, I found it to be not as good as the original, but not as awful. Like it wasn't all as awful as I feared. I think this is a Top Gun Maverick for the pumpkin spice latte crowd. This is a movie that is way after its sequel's relevancy point, but somehow manages to do everything it kind of needs to do. Like it is a confounding movie in some ways. There are so many things that could be brought up. Garrett is right. The prologue was so good that after it ended, sorry, I don't know if you can hear that in the background. The prologue was so good with those little girls, right? That I was like, it can only go downhill from here. Like it can only fall short of this incredible performance by these little girls acting like Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy, and then Hannah Waddingham as I guess the devil. Because in the last movie, when I pay a lot of attention when I watch movies, and the last movie, They said that they got booked from the devil. So I guess she's the devil, but she was not. She claimed to be a witch. So I don't know. Maybe there's some revisionism going on there, or maybe they just like to romanticize who she was in their retellings. But either way, there's a confounding part of this movie. I'm going to get into spoiler territory right now. All right.
Go for it.
Winifred flies by a window of people watching the original Hocus Pocus in this movie. Now that I don't understand.
Hated it.
That's universe break. This is not Deadpool. All right. This is not the Muppets. This is not Mel Brooks. This is Hocus Pocus. It doesn't make any sense for somebody to be watching the exact film they were in. It's just, and it was the Gary Marshall part, so it didn't like feature. She didn't like go in and see herself on tape. But it's just what a confusing joke to make.
They should have made it to where they were watching like an episode of Laverne and Shirley or something, or Happy Days, and you see Penny and Gary, and that would have been good enough, you know. But they gave you the movie, and that was like, what do you come on?
What would have been funnier to me is if they were watching the Santa Claus, but because that would have just been like, oh, it's a other Disney movie. So the movie really early on, I think, goes too hard on trying to recapture the gags. Like they have this extended sequence in the Walgreens, and I was like, oh man, if this is just going to be fish out of water jokes, but it's 2022 now and not 1993, this is going to get old fast. And it did get old. Now, luckily, it progressed past that. Once I got to the Walgreens, it's like, okay, let's get back on track with an actual story here. Let's get back these girls who are young and they're having a tiff with their other friend, you know, and all that. I thought that, oh gee, what is his name? He's been in a lot of things.
Sam Richardson.
Yeah, that guy. Is that his name?
You talking
Sam
about
Richardson.
Gilbert?
Yes, Gilbert. He was fine. He was good. I enjoyed him. He had a character that was waffling back and forth between his allegiances. That was very fun. Tony Hale. Line of the movie from Tony Hale when he said, "You had some kind of, unchaperoned party, and then I come home to the Gothic Golden Girls." Hilarious.
Tony Hale always the standout star.
I wrote down Gothic Golden Girls because that's like, I was like, dang it, man, that was a line that'd be worth saying in a review if it hadn't been said in the movie. Hilarious. So Tony Hale, great. A lot of the new adult actors, I think, really brought it in this movie. The young girls, too. So Whitney Peak, Melissa Escobedo, and then Lilia Buckingham. They're all fine. They're all very good. I actually enjoyed them more than the kids in the first movie, I think, because it wasn't quite as cringe, their role. They were just being regular people. Versus Max and his girlfriend and his sister just being like really, I don't know, just very 90s acting in that movie. Anyway, I think I've talked too long. It was better than I had hoped, but it's not going to surpass the original.
Right. It's definitely not going to do that. I liked it a bit more than either of you, I believe. I thought it was pretty fun. And I think I made a connection in my head that made me like it more, or at least kind of watch it from a different angle. And I don't remember when it happened, but it was fairly early on where I was like, these three sisters are basically like Halloween Animaniacs. They're just Wacko, Yakko, and Dot released in a Halloween town. And that very much tickled me because I love the Animaniacs and I love the stupid antics of a trio of siblings. So then I just kind of really appreciated it. And I thought, I liked that they leaned into old gags because some of those gags are character traits, the way that they walk in unison and stuff like that. So I didn't really see them as a problem so much. But another way I differ is I didn't love that prologue either.
Oh, really?
And it's not because of the performance or anything. I laughed and thought they were quite good. What bothered me about it is I had a fear during it that this movie was going to try to make the Sanderson sisters into the protagonist that you were going to then feel sympathy for. And I didn't want that with children eating witches,
Right.
Now they didn't do that. So my fear was unfounded, but they kind of said it that way. And so it made me realize, why did we do that at all?
Well,
why did we have them escape from a town who was trying to force them into marriages? Like, that's a real crappy thing. Anybody's going to be siding with the girls there.
Right.
So I liked their performances were fantastic. They did a really great job mimicking the sisters themselves, but I just didn't know what purpose it was serving. This way it went.
I understand how you feel, and there were different elements in this movie where they definitely were contextualizing witch hunts for an element of what they kind of were, which was a sort of way of restricting women in the 1600s, 1700s, and even into modern day. There's things about there are ways that people go about doing that, and so I was like, man, are they going to make them? They became witches just because they were bold and confident in a time when women weren't allowed to be bold and confident,
Right.
and in a way, yes, but they do. I think they did kind of hinge in on, but they are bad guys. They did go on to continue eating children and stuff like that, and and curse people to be cats for hundreds of years and things like that. So
So I wasn't upset with it in the end because they didn't lean into that as much as I was afraid they were going to. But then I also liked, again, getting into super spoiler territory if you care about that. I loved how they do they tug at your heartstring a bit at the end for the one thing that you could have some sympathy for these women for, which is their own bond, their sisterly bond, and how, Winifred makes a pretty terrible ultimate mistake in not heeding the warnings of the spell when she realizes that means the things she most loves have to be traded. And so she loses. God, what are their names? I can only remember Winifred.
Winnie
Sarah.
and Sarah.
And Mary and Sarah.
Mary and Sarah, right. So Mary and Sarah, they get Thanos snapped into the wherever they go.
They get a very pretty hair.
So then in that moment, I am like, wow, Winifred is a horrible person who eats children, but man, I feel for her there.
Yeah.
So that was fine. I was fine with that. So they turned it around.
It's a tightrope. It is very much a family film. Like it is the bad guys are bad, but they're not like pure-ish evil. You know what I mean? Right. And the way Sarah Jessica, so you had trouble with the name. The way Bette Midler says Sarah, it sounds like Sella sometimes. I don't know if that's just a Midlerism. Sounds like she goes Sella. And so I was like, for the first few years, I thought her movie was Sella. No, you're right. I have something of Sanderson Sisters that I feel like we should wait a little bit longer to get to.
Okay, I have a couple more thoughts. I
wanted to take off on some of your other stuff, but go ahead.
Okay, I did like a lot of the meta humor, but I agree that the watching the movie in the background is questionable. Just because I think it was a little too hard of a wink. Ultimately, I don't really think it's that much of a sin, quite frankly, because the true target demographic of this movie is children, and that is a scene that they're not going to immediately recognize, as being from the first one. That's kind of a joke for us older people, because we're gonna catch that for sure. But I still don't love it. But I get what they were trying to do. I think it's like there's peering through the fourth wall, and then there's like shattering it, and that one kind of shattered it. But I do like how they make sure to let you know that the Sanderson. The legend of the Sanderson sisters has become even more a part of the lore of this town since the first time. Like the first time around in 1993, it was still a big deal, and they talked about it every Halloween. But now there's like merch and stuff, and the cottage has been turned into a whole magic shop. So I like that they're more.
It's extended to their house now.
Yeah, they're more famous in Salem now, so that's kind of nice. And I also liked I had caught this early on that now in 2022, none of the kids in Salem are into Halloween. Only the adults are. Whereas in the first one, we were like, why is Max the only kid who doesn't care about Halloween? Exactly. Now it's like none of the kids seem to care about it except for Glenn, who was awesome.
I love that one thing I did appreciate of this movie is that they handled things pretty well. You look at how they treated Glenn, and he was dressed as Dracula, but it's around Halloween, and they were like, we kind of invited Glenn. And he's like, they say his name over and over, was like, what? And it's so Glenn. But then they talk about how he's such a good dancer later on, and they like compliment him there. And I appreciate the boyfriend. I think his name was Mike.
Yeah.
Whenever he had the realization that he wasn't just making conversation, and that it was coming across that he was being mean and bullying, and he had that moment of like, oh my God, I didn't mean it. I was just like, that was also a nice little moment that you don't see in those. I appreciated it. It was well done.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to think of like something else other than the big thing I want to talk about, my big pitch.
Let's talk about it. Oh, Josh, do you have something?
Well, just a couple other quibbles that overall I liked it, but there's plenty of quibbles that you can make with any kids movie, and like I don't. It's a bit cliched for, of course, this main girl to discover she has powers at the end.
Right.
It's like every kid's dream. But I don't love the implications set up by the system where it's like, okay, but was she gonna have to eat children's souls?
Yes.
Only if she wants to stay young and beautiful.
But like she's a
She's
witch.
content with getting old.
I'm sure corruption will hit her eventually. Is it the implication is in the air that she
She's
might
walking-
eat children one day, and I don't know if I love that.
She's walking around with the Darkhold. We saw what that did to Wanda.
Now,
Well,
unless
you
there was
could
a
have-
way,
Now-
unless there was an alternative to
Right.
children's souls that they could discover in modern times.
And maybe there is. Maybe there
But-
is. Now, Josh,
I think
wanna
you'll have
talk
to tune
about-
into the Disney Plus series to find out.
I wanted to talk about the, like you said, the emotion of the sisters going and Bette Midler. I tell you what, Bette Midler did a great job, but man, that freaking book was laying on a performance. I was looking at that
Right.
book's eye, and I was like, man, how are they getting all this emotion out of like what I assume is just a mechanical eye on a book face? I'm like
That's
actually,
Jones.
I'm like actually feeling for this book right now. He feels bad, and he
Yeah.
cried. The book cried.
Very
It's,
interesting to give book
very
a
good.
conscience. I thought that's a nice little twist.
Yes, and he's like
But
making very clear choices and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I think it also helped a lot that you just mentioned how great Bette Midler was. All three of them did not phone in this movie at all.
No, they've
And-
been waiting for it.
And like they could have easily phoned this in, but they stepped right back into it and upped the ante. If anything, they just looked like they were having so much fun doing it,
Yeah.
and I
is
appreciate
kind-
that.
Like you said with Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, there is kind of a Three Stooges element here, and I
Yeah.
bet, for three older actresses, these kind of like the kind of role doesn't come around all that often. They're often stuck with being grandmas or mothers in movies or girlfriends and stuff like that. So to like kind of come in and do like a bit of like some slapstick comedy and there's kind of vaudeville elements of it too, where you're just kind of having a lot of fun. I think it's probably a refreshing role to do, and I bet that for years they probably thought it's my dog creeping in the frame. I bet that for years they kind of thought it'll never happen.
never
The fun
happen,
thing
yeah.
I did in the '90s, and now it's back, and it's like they put on I bet when they put on the costumes, they put on the wigs and the makeup, they were like, oh gosh, it's like I'm back in this fun character that I did 30 years ago.
Right.
So I'm kind of glad for them. They got to have fun. And it felt for me like early on, it was, I don't know, they were having too much fun. It is a very wacky universe
Disagree
because,
with that.
because they don't know what a Walgreens is, but while in the damnation of hell, they did catch up on Elton John and Blondie. Like that's totally fine, but like they're still puzzled by the idea of fluorescent lighting. One of my favorite jokes though was when they said, "That's fluorescence for you," and she goes, "Fluorescence." She was in the coven across the street.
There were a lot of very well
There-
written, subtle jokes, and I appreciated that. That was a good one. I also really liked when they were like, "Mary, retrace our steps," and she goes, "If my mind serves me incorrectly," and that was pretty. That was quick.
That was like,
subtle, and I
oh.
appreciated it.
And I'll tell you what, even though the Sanderson sisters aren't the good guys, they were trapped in that salt circle, right? And I wasn't loving every joke they had with the Roombas, but when those Roombas came scooting up to save the day, I was like, Roomba,
Yeah,
they made it. I was like, that's how they get out of this. I was like sitting there thinking, like, how are they gonna get out of this?
I mean,
They
the,
do
o-
look
for
like
me,
they stunk.
the only line that really delivered with the Roombas was the cowabunga when she said, "It's okay, cowabunga." Like that's it. That's it.
I want to feel like a lot of Kathy and Jimmy's lines are improv, but maybe they aren't.
It felt like it's
It delivers like they are, and sometimes that's key.
Another issue I took was, man, as interesting as I thought it was to have Gilbert be this odd like turncoat kind of character, they really wasted Billy by putting him with him. I thought there's not nearly enough Billy doing him. Like Billy actually never really served a point of being in this, other as fodder for not Glenn. Let's see, Greg, Garrett. I don't know.
It was Glenn. Gilbert.
Gilbert.
I
He
agree.
was just kind of a foil for Gilbert along the way, so I was ashamed. I thought.
This movie did one of those things that I feel like a lot of these movies do that we've reviewed late or over the course of this, where they have three kind of separate stories and they all branch out. So at some point in time, you have the modern Hocus Pocus people and they're trapped doing their own thing. And then you have the 3 originals and they're doing their own thing. And then you have over here Sam and Billy and they're doing their own thing. And for me personally, when they're separate, I don't care about 2/3 of it. I really like what's going on over here with the modern stuff and building that up, but they focus too much time on the gags for me. I think that they gave me too much when they could have put them kind of in the back. That's what I like about the first one too, is the first one, they're not the main focus. They're the stars. But the kids are the driving force and their story is telling it and they are around there. And that's what this one missed.
Obviously, we knew we were going to get a witches from the 1600s encountering Siri joke when they did. And it landed how you thought it would. Not well, I think. It was just kind of as obvious as they could get it. Honestly, the joke before where Sarah Jessica Parker stretched out because she said spread out was better than the Siri joke that they followed up with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to give this I'm going to give this a positive rating, I think. But yeah, I don't know.
I did love about Gilbert, though, the way that they made him be present in the first movie.
Yeah.
As kind of a lurker in the background, and the way they inserted him into that story that way. That was fun.
Makes a lot of sense.
It was
makes
clever.
a lot of sense that there would be other people who were outside of the purview of the original story's perspective, but remember that night.
Exactly. And it answered one of my questions from the previous movie, which was, does the rest of the town not know?
Yeah.
Okay, some of them do.
Some of them do, and they remember, but what are they going to do about it?
Exactly.
Right? Luckily,
maybe
Gilbert
only
did.
the ones who were kids at the time knew. I don't know.
I wouldn't.
Nobody believes kids, and that's how the legends expand.
Yeah, a little more on that would have been nice. I just need.
I would have liked. I would have liked for Gilbert to have been, when he turned out to be the one trying to get the Sanderson sisters back, for him to be a bit more accepted maybe by the Sanderson sisters, but it also wouldn't really, I don't think, have been totally in their character because they're very. They're directly inward focused. They're not looking to expand their ranks in any way.
No,
they're not looking to add any witches.
No. So okay. So what is this thing you've been wanting to bring up?
All right.
What is it that you haven't yet?
All right. So spoiler alert. So if you are really determined to see this movie before listening to this review, I would do so now, and then come back and listen to my pitch. All right. Post-credit scene. Did you guys watch the post-credit scene?
Yes.
There was a post.
Oh, yes, we did. Okay.
At the end of the movie where the black cat, Cobweb, jumps up on the shelf and he reveals a black candle, a box that says like Black Flame Candle 2. So Gilbert made more than one Black Flame Candle, implying that there could be a sequel, a third Hocus Pocus, a Hocus Pocus 3, if you will. Maybe they'll go with the Fast and the Furious name style and it'll just be Hocus. Or just Pocus. Frankly, I'm upset this one wasn't
P3. That's what I think.
Hocus to Pocus. But here's my pitch, because Josh, you alluded to it, and this is what I told Nikki the other night. Was I was convinced they were going to make the Sanderson sisters the protagonists of this movie, that they were going to sort of, because they are the iconic piece, they are the main characters, they're going to make them the good guys. And they didn't do that. And I'm glad. They didn't do that. But now that they have made the sequel, and now that they're looking at a Hocus Pocus 3, now is the perfect time to pull a Terminator 2 for there to be a worse witch, a worse coven. The Black Flame Candle gets lit again because the only people who can stop this coven are the Sanderson sisters. And so they come back.
The most powerful witch is Wanda.
Exactly. They come back to fight the Scarlet Witch. This is chaos magic. Hang on. What? Bette Midler. This is chaos magic. I can't do it. Anyway, they had their heartfelt moment at the end. They realized that, they grew too ambitious, and they had their heartfelt moment and they went off in a nice, loving moment, right?
Each other,
so of course,
need power.
When they come back, they're good guys now. And it's the young witches that sent them off the first time. They come back and they go, "You've grown. Oh, look at your powers." Ooh, all that stuff, right? And we need you because we have to fight this. And they dig up more aging, stars to come and be the bad guys of, I'm thinking Barbara Streisand. I'm thinking,
Babs. Gotta have Babs.
I'm thinking, oh shoot.
Patty LuPone.
Huh?
Patty LuPone.
No, I was
stars now.
I was Patty LuPone. No, I was trying to think of one of the other people from Sex and the City. I was trying to think of
Kim Cattrall.
Kim Cattrall, exactly. So it's Kim Cattrall, it's Barbara Streisand. What's the Kathy and the Jimmy equivalent? The voice of Bart Simpson. Bring all of them They're the other coven. It's like a bizarro situation, and that's your Hocus Pocus 3 is the Sanderson sisters, like the Terminator in Terminator 2, are now the good guys fighting an even worse Terminator. So
It's interesting. I think it would make sense ish if they were to make a movie like that. However, I truly don't want a third one
I know.
because this one was good enough to not ruin anything. I don't feel like it ruined the legacy. It didn't ruin my childhood. I laughed and I did enjoy seeing them back. So let's not risk it another time.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. But if it's gonna happen,
But if it's gonna happen,
feel
I
like
think
that's
you
how you
might
do it.
be right that they would turn them into good guys like
Right.
that. Because how you gonna have them be the same villains again? You know, it's got to be upped.
after a while, they just go, stop lighting these candles.
Right. Quit making them, you idiots.
The best part would be if they waited another 30 years to do it. So it's like 90-year-old Bette Midler and wandering around. I don't know how old she is now. How old is Bette Midler? She's 76.
It's a 20-year age difference.
Right.
She really
She looks pretty good in this movie.
She is. She
Excel.
does great. Gets her
Did a
name
good
right.
job.
Singing it.
So we don't have box office for this, obviously.
We
so
don't.
we'll skip that. And we'll just go straight into a ratings and review game. What do we think the Letterboxd community has rated it? Now, keep in mind for our audience that the movie just came out the weekend we're recording this, so there's not going to be as many reviews as if it had been there for a while, but there's going to be enough after a full weekend to get a good picture. And
I'm going to say,
hold up.
sorry, you go first, Josh.
I'm going to guess that it's pretty similar to the first one, which I believe was actually, let me look real quick and refresh it. Okay, so the first one was a 3.5. I feel like it'll be close to that, honestly, but probably not higher for sure. But I'm going to go with 3.1
That's a good guess.
is my guess.
Garrett, you go. You go.
I think that it's not going to be as liked. And I think it's going to be in the 2s, but I still think it's going to be high because it's early. I think it's going to be like a 2.8.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, in my head, I was always going to go with a 3, and I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to say it's a 3.0.
Okay. 3.1.
I have to hit it on the head here.
3.0 and 2.8. Hocus Pocus 2. Get out of here. Freaking pop up.
That's how they get you.
Hocus Pocus 2 with, tell me how many reviews. Okay, we got 28,000 ratings. This is a pretty good sample size.
Not bad.
I did it again and I won.
Hey! Hey!
I got it right. It was a 3.1.
Nice.
Right on the dot.
Right on the dot. Let's look at some of the popular reviews. There are two types of people in this world: those who support Sanderson Sisters supremacy and trash. So I actually saw the movie yesterday. Very emotional, very grateful. Tony Hale is my dad in this. I literally have peaked.
Is that the girl? Is that the girl who plays
I doubt it, but
Is
I
that-
look into it deeper.
Lily of
Um,
Buckingham? Is that her Letterboxd account?
That'd be funny.
I don't know. Now I
There's some.
Might
look
just be,
at it later.
it might just be
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
saying he's like my dad, or
Probably.
it could be the actual actress. You never know.
And you know what? Not a lot of funny reviews. Most of them are actually pretty sincere. So, which is not as
that's
fun to
nice.
read.
There you go. There you go. Well,
Overall,
I was gonna say that brings our letterbox score up. I'll give you a little heads up going into the end of the year. I'm at 10. You guys are tied at 7 apiece. Andrew's
Okay.
at 2. He's only been on the show like 6 times this year, so he's got probably got the best average.
Thinks he's eliminated from playoff
he's,
contention.
yeah, he is. What is it called when you're playing, but it doesn't count toward? It's a thing, right?
I don't know. It's just a busted week for the rest of us, really.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I think overall, I was pretty pleased with it. It's not better than the original, but it's not so worse that it wasn't a fun movie to put into your Halloween rotation, especially if you got kids around or you just want to watch something that will get you in the spirit but isn't actually scary. So I think I'm going to give it a 3.
yeah, I'm very much on the same wavelength as you. I gave the first Hocus Pocus 3.5, and this did not sink to the level of bad that I normally reserve for my sub 3 movies. So I'm just going to give it a 3.0 because it was fine. It did what I think exactly what it wanted to do. There were a lot of fun jokes, and it didn't overstay its welcome. So, and I also
That's true. It wasn't a 2.5 hour Hocus Pocus
I-
universe.
I didn't say this before, but I also thought the visual effects were really good in this movie because they did a thing where they kind of used modern technology to sort of replicate the 90s visual effects. So everything looked and felt very similar. There was a big backdrop that was all of it, like had to be a blue screen, but clearly was made to look just like it was a giant screen behind them. You know, like in the old time. So
Oh,
Darcy, go ahead, Garrett.
For me, I was high on the first one. I think I gave it a 4. This one, I talked myself up to giving it a 2. It's okay. It's the pitch perfect for me, where it was too close to leaning into Hocus Pocus, and don't do it again. It's fine here. You stop.
Don't do it again.
You don't do it again. So
Don't do
2
it
stars
again.
for me.
It's like when you tell your kid when they throw a bottle across the room and it lands in the trash can, but it
Did Jack like it? Did he watch it? Did he like it?
exploded. He did not. He watched a little bit of the beginning, but he was too distracted by everything
Okay.
else in life. So we had to put him to bed so that we could finish the movie.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
I bet
fair enough.
them.
It does not rise to the level of Winnie the Pooh for him.
Well,
It's hard to beat. Nothing does.
Winnie the Pooh is great. He loves Donald Duck shorts. So this takes a while. I mean, this was not far off from a Donald Duck short in a lot of ways, but
you're right.
but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So I do hope they make a third one, just so we can review it and we can all just be as supremely disappointed.
If they do make it, we will review it, but I can't guarantee you we'll like it.
You know what this
So-
is? This is pitch perfect too of Halloween of Hocus Pocus movies. We need that Hocus Pocus 3 to complete.
No, we need to stop
Clearly.
Tatum before he comes up with the next terrible idea with more of our So Many Scares Halloween month. So find us online, SoManySequels.com. We'll see you next time.